Hey, let's get our notes out today. We're in week 4 of a series called Light in the World, and it's been hopefully a good series for you. If you're new to Renovation, we typically will unpack a situation, a topic, something for a few weeks, and then we'll kind of move on. This topic, what we're talking about today, and really what we've been talking about for the last this is the 4th Sunday, is not just why in the world did God have to come and die, but just as important, why did God have to come and live? Why did he have to come and live? Why couldn't he have just gone straight to the cross, do that, and then not have to live? And so we've been talking that Christianity as Christians, and you may not be a Christian here today, and that's great because you know, sometimes you go to churches and it's all insiders. It's like inside talk. It's inside, you just kind of know you walked inside an insider group. And I hope that that's not your experience if this is your first Sunday, because we have a large percentage, sometimes 15, 20, 25% of people who are coming and hanging out with us, they don't believe the way that I believe. They would not say that they are necessarily Christians. They would not necessarily say that they believe everything that I would believe. And you know what I tell them? It's okay. It's all right. We want to be a place for those who are just kind of seeking, those who are like maybe turned off, those who've been hurt by God, or necessarily they feel like they've been hurt by God, maybe hurt by Christians, right? I don't know if that's impossible, right, for Christians to hurt people. We're so nice. Or maybe the church or whatever. And so if you're here today, I'm glad that you're here because we actually believe some crazy things as Christians. And if you're a Christian and if you don't think you're a little crazy for thinking and believing what you believe, you need to listen to yourself sometime. You believe in a God you can't see. You believe in a God that created all things. You believe in a God who sent his son. You believe in a God that sent a spirit. You believe in a God who gave us text in this book called the Bible that's been written by many different authors over hundreds of years, and you say that it's like different than any other book, and that that somehow it's infallible, that really? You think I'm wacko? You ought to listen to yourself, Mr. Christian, Miss Christian. Let's just be honest. So if you're here today and you're a skeptic of all of us Christians, listen, it's okay. You got every right to be. But I'm not afraid of that. And more importantly, it's not just that I'm not afraid. God's not afraid of that. Because God came to love on skeptics. And if you're a skeptic today, you're number 1 on his book, on his list of people to love. And so this idea that Christians, we believe this, God became one of us. Is that not crazy? Well, why do we believe that God became one of us? Well, it's because the guy who hung out with the most and who loved Jesus, and Jesus loved him the most, and who was around the longest was John, the apostle. And he was he was thinking through, like, how am I going to present the Messiah? How am I going to present God in a body? Right? And he goes, here's my introduction. This is what I want to say. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. Basically he's saying, and the Word put on flesh, and he pitched a tent and went camping with all of us. Moved into the hood of humanity, and he put the most displaced, marginalized, ignored person he could find as his earthly mother, a Galilean teenage girl, to be able to have this coming out party. And he invited to the party the people that even the marginalized Galilean Jews didn't even like. And that's the shepherds. They were smelly, unruly, lived out with beasts. How did they get invited to the party? Because we learned in week 1, is the reason why God had to come and live and dwell among us is that he wanted to communicate and demonstrate what God is like through his son, Jesus Christ. And everywhere you turn, everywhere you look at Jesus in the Gospels, and we've been looking through the Gospels and we're like reading through the Gospels and we're saying, hey, listen, I know that there's signs. There's signs and hints in the science world and history and in nature and all different kinds of things. And there's hints and signs of who God is. But the biggest sign, the biggest thing that person you need to look to is Jesus Christ to communicate and demonstrate. He said God in a bod came so that he could demonstrate and communicate the value of God here on earth. And so if you're looking away from Jesus, or if you get kind of close to Jesus and you go up and look other places, you're going to miss God. You're just going to miss him. And so the more that you look at Jesus on earth and through the Gospels and all the things that he said and all the things that he did, you begin to fill in the gaps of who God is. What is God's economy? What is God's value? Jesus says, listen, I don't have a good definition of God. I am the definition of God. I don't have a good illustration of who God is. I am the embodiment. I am the illustration of who God is. That was week 1. Week 2, we go, okay, so we want to demonstrate, communicate. And then we saw this story that kind of confronted all of our bad theology. We got some bad theology up in this house. There was bad theology 2,000 years ago. And we saw this story about how this blind dude who's been blind all of his life, and all of a sudden Jesus does this crazy stuff and he heals the blind man. And the whole idea was, before he did that, they asked Jesus, hey, Jesus, let me ask you a good question. Because this is how they thought back in the day. Why is this guy blind? Is it because he was a sinner or his parents was a sinner? Because it had to be one of the two. Because that was just the common theology back in the day. And Jesus blew their mind. And he said, neither. It's not because he sinned, and it's not because they sinned. It's because God wanted to show his power through his pain. And so week 2, we just simply said this. He said, sometimes God chooses to display his power through our pain. Wow. So I've been living my whole life thinking every time anything bad happens to me, it's just God saying, gotcha. Gotcha. Reason why you got this or this or this, it's just your fault. You're just miserable. You're just awful. You're just a loser. Like, wow. So I'm not a loser? That's good news. If you come to church and find out that you're not a loser, that's a good day. You're winning. And then last week we discovered why in the world would God in a bod have to live and dwell among us. And it was just simply this, that he wanted to elevate the dignity of each individual, which was so opposite of the culture of first century. That Jesus came and all of a sudden everything, you just think of all the people, everybody that he had identified with, and we went through a whole list of people that he identified with, that nobody identified with, that they were marginalized, they were outcast. He touched people, he allowed people to come near. It was a whole list of things, and where there was hardly any dignity for women, for kids, for marginalized, Jesus says God's value is that all people matter, not just a few. So today, if you got your notes out, we're going to go one more step in answering this question. Why is it that God, in a bod, through Jesus Christ, had to live among us? Here's our new reason today. To put religion in its proper place. To put religion in its proper place. Now this is very important. Religion has a place. And religion actually plays a very important role in our culture and in our society. I'm not just even talking about Christian religion. Just all religion, because we all have questions we don't have answers for. And religion gives us sort of a context for answering some of those questions. What happens when we die? Will I ever see my mother again? Will I see my mother-in-law again? How big is heaven? How do we and am I? And all of these different questions that we have. And it gives us rules. It gives us systems. I mean, religion is good. It has its place. But we're going to look at what place should it have. You see, religion is systemic. It's systematic, right? It has, there's lots of rules. There's lots of things. There's lots of order in religion. We see that. So we're going to be looking at what happens when religion takes first place and begins flexing its muscles at the expense of mercy. That's the problem with when religion has first place, when it's at the top of the list, when religion is, when it begins to kind of flex its muscle, guess what happens to mercy? Out the door it goes. What happens to compassion? Out the door it goes. What happens to justice? Well, listen, this is the rules. This is the law. We got to go by it. Sorry, tough. Glad I'm not you. People are expendable. People can be marginalized. People can be put in a category. That's how religion has worked for hundreds and hundreds of years. When it's at the top of the value system. And God goes, hey, listen, I'm not here to take away religion. Religion has its place. It just can't be first place. I mean, we see that in history. How many of you guys remember world history way back? I don't know what grade it was that I endured world history. I don't know if it was 7th or 8th grade or what that was, but I fairly remember the whole section on the Crusades. And the reason why I remember the section on the Crusades is that our Christian school, I went to a Christian school in Kansas City, and we were the Crusaders. And so when it got to the point talking about the Crusades, and I'm like, well, we're the Crusaders, so yeah, go Crusaders. Right? Now, just as a side, like there are lots of schools who go by Crusaders. Now, I am sure that you can redeem the word Crusaders like you can pretty much anywhere. But when you think about history and when you understand history in light of all, especially how God made us and God's value, you all of a sudden you realize probably shouldn't have any Christian schools with that name as Crusaders. Because if you don't remember back in the day, back in the history of the Crusades, like it was not good. And so back in the day, the Crusades, and if you kind of remember, I'm not a great historian, just kind of reading up on this a little bit, kind of reminding myself like how religion has been able, when it's at the first place, whenever it's all encompassing, all of a sudden religion can make you do things and say things and believe things that was never God's intent. And so, if you remember your history a little bit, it was Pope Urban II in 1095 that started the Crusades. And the reason why he started the Crusades is that he wanted to go into the Holy Lands, which had been conquered by the Turks and the Muslims, and he wanted to join East and West Christendom. There was only one church. There was only Catholic Church. There was only one Pope. There wasn't a whole bunch of denominations. I mean, nothing. I mean, it was just one. And what is amazing is that in 1,000 years, basically, you went from Jesus Christ dying, resurrected, handing the keys to the hope of the world to a bunch of misfits and underdogs, about 120 people in an upper house, and they started the church in Christianity in Acts chapter 2, chapter 3, and the hallmark of those Christians back in the day wasn't power, wasn't prestige, they didn't have buildings, they didn't have anything other than a reputation to love people that didn't love them, and to go places that nobody else wanted to go into, and to help people that nobody wanted to help. And so because of that, they were starting to be known as, they got this reputation that's going, hey, you kind of act like that Christ that you're always talking about. So we're all a bunch of little Christians running around here. And so what's crazy is you have all these Christians running around and they didn't all look the same. They had different cultures and ethnicities, and they had different backgrounds, and some were slave and free, and some were Roman, some were Jews, some were all. It was a whole mix of people. And you go from that 1,000 years later, now there's Christendom. There's a pope, and he's trying to get kind of world dominance. And how do I leverage the Gospels, and how can I leverage religion so that I can conquer? And how can I have power? And how can I gain more finances? All of this kind of stuff. And so he's like, I need to have a speech. I need to rally the troops together. I need to get more people. I need more foot soldiers. I need all kinds of people who are going to join this holy crusade. Right? And we're going to go, we're going to conquer that land, and we're going to take those vile people down. And so here was his, and it's not a direct, it's kind of a lot of different pieces of his manuscript, of kind of his recruitment speech that he gave in different places. And this is what Pope Urban said. He says, on this account, I, or rather the Lord, beseech you as Christ's heralds to publish this everywhere and to persuade all people of whatever rank, whether they be foot soldiers and knights, poor and rich, to carry aid promptly to those Christians and to destroy that vile race from the lands of our friends. Moreover, Christ commands it. Wow. All who die by the way, whether by land or sea or in battle against the pagans. See, when religion gets top shelf, we can start naming names and claiming sides. Those people are expendable. Right? Or in battle against the pagans, and here's the promise. Pretty good promise right here. They shall have immediate remission of sins. What? You mean, wait a minute. Oh, Barbara, are you telling me that I can live like a hellion? Every day of the week, I can join your crusade. I can go kill people. I can go steal from things. I can just kind of be violent. And you're going to forgive my sins? I'm not going to have to worry about that. I'm not going to have to worry about the guilt. I'm not going to have to worry about going to hell. I'm not going to have to worry about paying my way to get out of hell. Like, are you kidding me? I'm going to be, you are giving me freedom? Wow. See, that's what religion can do when it's in first place. You see, now, it's easy for us to get upset. But we got a little religion in our own selves. We have a little pecking order in our own little world. Especially as Christians. I mean, we would, oh my gosh, we would never say anything like that. But we have a little bit of a judgmentalness when it comes to others and outsiders. Have you ever gotten so upset by a group of people that you just said to yourself, well, Jesus, just come on right now. Take us back and you just give them what they deserve. I've heard of Christians saying that, and I know none of you would say that, but I just heard of Christians that would think that way. That's awful. Right? So when you think about how religion has over the years been terrible in our world, but here's the problem: religion collapses under the weight of the real world. It does. And this is kind of personal for me, and what I mean by this is that you hear me preach sermons, or you hear preachers preach sermons, and we say things like, well, if you want to have a successful family, just follow these 3 simple rules. Hey, 3 easy ways to a great marriage. That's supposed to be a joke. You're supposed to laugh at that, right? Because there is no 3 easy ways to have a great marriage. There's just only one. And she wins. That's it. That's the only way that's the only rule for a happy marriage. It's just the rule, guys. She wins, right? So Just so you know. But there are, and we talk a lot about principles, right? And principles are good. Principle of the path, right? The best question ever, right? I mean, we have great principles. We look at God like all of that, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't have all of that. The problem is, so often is that is all that we just kind of like, hey, just follow this, just follow this, and just follow this, and here's the rules, and here's the guidelines. But the problem is, life happens. The problem is, your kids grow up. The problem is, your kids like people that you don't like. And you say to, your daughter, I love him. I just don't love him for you. Or your son, or whatever that is, right? And so religion collapses, but here's real life. Real life is unsystematic. Religion has systems. Real life is inconsistent. Religion is very consistent. Just follow the rules. Just here, do this, all of those things. It's random. Religion is not random. Life is messy. Religion tries to drive out all the messiness. So they sweep it under the rug. They kind of get it away. Like, oh, no. We don't. That's real life. And when religion is in first place, leaders become self-righteous and followers become hypocrites. I mean, it's just going to be honest in here. And we're supposed to be honest in church, right? So here's the problem is that when it comes to when religion is in first place, leaders, like I said, like, hey, listen, I want to maintain what I have as a leader. I want to maintain control of what I have. And so over years, sometimes certain leaders, they kind of elevate certain parts or systems or laws or rules in kind of their thinking that they actually have some control over, and they can kind of win in that. They kind of dummy down some of the other things that they're not very good at. And so now all of a sudden, as leaders, right, I'm like, okay, we're this, and this, and so we become a little self-righteous, and so we want to try to maintain our prestige and our posture as a leader. That's when religion has its first place, when all I'm thinking about is religion, and I'm not thinking about people, and I'm in a bad place as a leader, which can happen to anybody. So all of a sudden, I'm leading a group of people, and I'm saying, you got to do this, and this, and if you just do this, and this, then automatically God's going to do this, and this. Problem is, then as followers, then all of a sudden, like, okay, well then I just need to pretend, because I know I can't do this, and this. But I can show up on Sunday, I can show up on Saturday, I kind of act like I got my act together, but don't say anything. Kids, husband, right? Friend, And so we hush all of these things that we're all struggling with. And so it's no wonder that people who are skeptical of God, and more important, skeptically of Christians, because all of a sudden they see self-righteous leaders and a bunch of hypocrites at the church, and we got to go, guilty. So what keeps us from being self-righteous and what keeps us from being hypocrites? We all have to say, listen, there's not a sin in the book that I'm not capable of performing. There is nothing within me that is any more special to do anything wrong as it relates to a sin. It is God living within me by the grace and by the mercy of God Almighty, unless there goes me, right? See, religion wants us to just kind of dismiss things and dismiss people. Life is too hard. So what has happened is that we've raised up a bunch of really good hypocrites. And I'm not trying to be angry because I understand that. Well, can we just be honest as a community of faith and as people? Like, okay, listen, none of us get a free pass on anything. Now, as parents, not working through marriages, not working through just junk. Sexual stuff, physical stuff, financial stuff, all of that stuff. Everybody has issues with those things. So when religion has its first place, that's what can happen, and it happens very easily. In Jesus, we see that Jesus consistently prioritized people over his own religion, customs, and traditions. He did. Now, you got to understand that Jesus was born and lived and died a Jew. Jesus was not born and didn't live and die as a Christian American. He doesn't have our sensibilities. That's not how he lived. He was not a Christian. He was a Jewish man, all God, and all a Jewish man. Christianity didn't happen until after his death. So Jesus was a Jew, understood everything, of course, about his culture, his customs, and traditions. But do you know what he consistently did while he was walking on this earth? He prioritized people over all of those things. Isn't that amazing? When we talk about, we got to get our cues from Jesus. We see it in one of the stories that Mark told. One Sabbath, Jesus was going through the grain fields. And as his disciples walked along, they were getting hungry. There was no 7-Eleven around. Kind of add my part. They began to pick some heads of grain. Now, let me tell you something. Heads of grain, that's about as bad granola as you're going to find right there. I mean, that's bad stuff right there. You know what I'm saying? So his disciples walked along and they began to pick some heads of grain. The Pharisees, who were hanging out, watching them, looking at them, going, oh my gosh, look at what they are doing. That is unlawful on the Sabbath. They are picking heads of grain. Really? You think this is work? You equate grabbing a little bit of wheat and picking off something like that. I mean, they must have been hangry at that point. But yet, here are these Pharisees they represent what? Religion. They represent the religious laws, rules you must obey above all things. It doesn't matter if you're starving. Don't matter if you're hungry. Don't matter if you're thirsty. Don't matter if you're sick. None of that matters. It's the Sabbath. We're going to honor God, keeping the rules, right? Then he said to me, and this is earth-shattering. In this moment, Jesus is telling a little bit about the value system of God Almighty. And this shocked. Now, we grew up in church and we see this is no big deal. This was a huge deal. Back in the day, all of a sudden, Jesus turns to him and says, hey, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. You know that, right? No. What'd you say? I said the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. And he goes into the business story. He said, don't you remember David? And he was hungry back in the day. And so there was no food around him. So he went to the temple, which he wasn't supposed to go to the temple. And he got some food. And all of a sudden he was okay. Like, don't you remember that story? Yeah, but yeah, right, okay. So we're picking some grain off. Here's the thing. It's like God going back to the Israelites and basically saying this: for God so loved the nation of Israel that he delivered them from Egypt and then provided them with laws to live by. See, that's how you got all of those laws. I think it's crazy for us when we think about it. Maybe this way you can understand a little bit better this way. Parents. Any parents in the house? Raise your hand. Okay, let me ask you a question. Why did you have children? Well, I'll tell you why. You had a bunch of toys. And you didn't know what to do with those toys. You didn't want to play with them. You didn't have anybody. You had nobody to pick up the toys. And so you're like, you know what? We're going to have kids. So we'll have somebody to pick up our toys. Isn't that why you have kids? No, you have kids. Guess what comes after having kids? Toys show up. Big toys have little baby toys. And little baby toys the next morning have little baby toys. They just grow, right? They just multiply. Parents don't get, God in heaven, wasn't going, okay, all right, let's see. I got some great laws. In fact, I got a top 10. I got 10 great laws that I don't know what to do with. I mean, certainly I don't need laws, but I don't know what to do with these laws. So, you know what I'm going to do? I am going to create people so that I can give them these laws to play with. Do you think that's how God operated? Well, no. God made people. God loves people. God wants to help people. Rules came into play. See, when you took your parents, you had your babies, right? You took your first baby. Carly, my daughter, she was, had her down in Mobile, Alabama. She was pure sunshine, beautiful, little round mound, bald little head, right? I'm scared to death. I'm like, I know how to take care of basketballs and, basketball players. I never had a little sister. I went around a little baby, anything, baby girls. Holy cow. I got this little baby girl in the backseat of our Honda. And there's no book, there's no booklet, there's nothing on how to take care of this little baby. We get her home where we're actually staying on campus with a bunch of, basketball players because that's part of my job. And we're living down there with these basketball players and I'm telling them to be quiet and all this kind of stuff. And I get Carly home first day. And I'm snuggling with her and she's right in front of me. And you do all those weird noises and everything. And I remember that first couple of hours, I said, Carly, I love you so much. You're beautiful. Listen, sweetie. I got a few rules I'm going to share with you. I've had these rules, and my parents' rules, and my parents' rules, and I need to share them with you right now, sweetie. And let's just start with 25, all right? And I just went through that first day, and I just went through all of those. Like, did I do that? No. It's just weird. I didn't even think of a rule of a law until one day she tried to put her hand in the fire. Candle. No. You can't do that. Why? I hate her? No. Hot. Burn. Star. See, that's your father. All of those rules, laws like that? No. That's not how we operate. And that's why he had to live among us to show us. In the Old Testament, here's what happens when religion becomes first place and we start to use people and malign people and it's all about kind of following the rules and it's all about our posture and pretending to do all the right things. We see in the Old Testament, Isaiah, man, God was upset with the Jewish nation because their posture in church, their posture in synagogue, their posture when it comes to sacrifice was really good. He said this, it's Isaiah 1, chapter 11, verse 11, it says, the multitude of your sacrifices, what are they to me, says the Lord? I have more than enough of burnt offerings, of rams and of the fattened animals. I have no pleasure in the blood of bulls, lambs, and goats. That's not what this is all about. Stop bringing me meaningless offerings. Your incense is detestable to me. When you spread out your hands in prayer during a great worship set, I hide my eyes. Even when you offer me many prayers, I'm not listening. No. I'm not listening to you sing. No, I'm not watching you sing. Like that's God. That's God telling his people. That's pretty serious, right? This is what's important. Learn to do right. Quit spreading your arms out. Quit singing a song. This is what I want you to do. I want you to learn to do right. Seek justice. Defend the oppressed. Take up the cause of the fatherless. Plead the case of the widow. That's what I want to hear. That's what I'll see. That's when I'll be looking, and that's when I'll be hearing. See, when religion has first place, everything else is second place. God goes, that's not. It has its place, but that's not my value system. We see it one last time as we close today. Back to Matthew. You've heard this. Talk to this story. You see in the Gospels that the Pharisees, the Sadducees, kind of the religious elite, they're always trying to catch Jesus in a trap, right? Once again, we've seen this, and the Pharisees, they were trying to catch him in a trap, and they were basically just trying to see what's the most important law. Let's see if we can get Jesus there. And so, of course, Jesus replies to that, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, of which all of those Pharisees and Sadducees said, man, that's awesome. Those are all things I can do within myself. Right? Those are all things that are nice and neat and tidy, and I can keep in here. And nobody knows. I can just kind of keep doing this, all of this kind of stuff. And the second is like it. What do you mean second? I thought there was just one. No, there's a second. It's just like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. It's not exactly like it. I mean, when you put it that way, love God with my whole heart, body, and soul, like I got that down. The second is just like it, so you're equaling like it's the same thing. Love your neighbor as yourself. Okay, well, I guess I can love my mother-in-law. I guess I can love my Jewish friends. No, I'm not talking about your Jewish friends. And Jesus kept telling story after story. I'm not telling you to love the people that's easy to love. I'm telling you love the Samaritans. Those were like fighting. Like, what do you mean Samaritans? Like, love the Romans. Love the Gentiles. Like, I'll show you who it is that you need to be a good neighbor to. I'll show you who you need to love. Love your neighbor as yourself. And the law and all the prophets hang on these two commands. Like, this is crazy. 600 and some laws, all these kind of things, and we're now down to these two commands. Like, what? Are you kidding me? And when you think about all the law, love God, love your neighbor. Like, all of the laws, like everything I read through Genesis, through Malachi, like, are you kidding me? Like, the whole Old Testament hangs on these two things. Love God, love your neighbor. And every book of the Old Testament, Genesis through Malachi, everything that you see, everything that you read, Psalms, Job, Nehemiah, please, like all of those, love God, love your neighbor. That's what those two commands. Everything hangs. Not only in the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, but also I'm doing a new thing. I've got a new covenant. I'm going to find a new way. I'm introducing you, not the founder, but the Father of heaven. All of a sudden, the New Testament, Matthew through Revelation, and Jesus is saying not just past, not just present, but into the future. All of these things hang on these two commands. So why in the world would it come? Well, it's because religion has a place. It's second place, not first place. So you have to ask the question. Well, if the two commands is love God and love people, then it's not just to be about following rules. You have to ask the question, what does love look like? What does love require of me? If that's the two things, loving God and loving people. I gave you, anybody probably don't remember this, I gave you some homework last week. I won't talk about that, but I gave you some hard work. Last week I talked about hard work. I said, hey, listen, when it comes to raising up the dignity of individuals, here's the two things like we need to work on our heart. we just need to repent. That's between you and God. But here's the second part, which is a lot harder than repenting. It's repairing. See, if you don't repair, there is no repentance.
Amen.
But if you don't repent, you have no power to repair.
Right.
See? And so it's repent and repair. And when it comes to what does love require of us, it's this idea that you and I have this view. We would simply say, you are more important to me than my view. You are more important to me than my view of politics, than my view of all the doctrinal issues. You are more important than all that. That's what it would begin to take on. What does love require of us? It's this idea that Jesus didn't die for rules. Right? He didn't die for rules. So I'm going to say my son Jesus, I'm going to die for. No. He died for rule breakers. Jesus, when it comes to sin, Jesus didn't die for sin. Yeah, he did. No, he didn't. He died for sinners. Jesus didn't die for a few. Jesus died for you. For some of you, you go, I don't think that's possible. You see, you just don't know what I've done. You just don't know where I've been. You don't know who I've harmed. You don't know who's harmed me. I may not. But your God, your Heavenly Father does. There's nothing He hasn't seen in your life or mine. And here's the most incredible thing, it's kind of crazy. You know what, when we talk about parents, we talk about fathers, sometimes we talk about fathers like, oh man, a lot of us have issued father wounds. Some of us have mother wounds. Some of us just have parent wounds. Even the best of us parents, we're going to wound our children. That's why Gloria and I we have an account. We don't have a college savings, we have a counselor savings. Like at some point, when you need counseling, we got some money for you. We just screwed you up at some point. Right? But here's what good parents, and I'm not claiming to be a good parent, but this is what good parents will do. A good parent has rules. Right? A good parent, they have rules, and a good parent is consistent with those rules. And a good parent, stays by those rules. You know what? Bedtime is 8 o'clock. You got school in the morning. You're just like, Mom, can I stay up and watch something? No, you got to go to bed. Mom, no, you need to go to bed. 8 o'clock. That's the rule. That's the rule. That's the rule. That's the rule. But on occasion, do you know what a good parent does? Breaks the rules they set. In light of what's going on tonight, I know it's bedtime, it's 8 o'clock, but you know what? Let's go to bed at 9. You know what a good parent, like you need to go to school. You're going to school, son. You're going to school. I promise you, you will be going to school over somebody's dead body. You're going, right? But on occasion, a good parent will break their own rule. Like in light of all that's going on, son, God, I tell you what, it's probably best to just stay home. Really? Yeah, I know. That your rule, I never stopped in 18 years of perfect attendance. Who cares about perfect attendance? I thought you did. And you're kind of like, oh, this does not feel right because I'm breaking the rules. Right? A good parent has rules and consistent. A good parent, though, on the flip side, hey, Dad, can I go to the party tonight? Later on, it's Friday night, and you're dropping off to school. Yeah, I think we're good. Yeah, everybody's going to be good. Yeah, oh yeah. Parents going to be, oh yeah, no problem. All right. and you drop your child off at 8 o'clock. They go in there, they're thinking they're going to the party, and you just go, you know what, let me jump on that Instagram. You pick up son at school at 2:30. Oh, Dad, thanks for letting me go to the party. Yeah, about that party. You see, you asked me if you could go there, and I said yes. And now I'm telling you no, because I found out where there was, and you ain't going there. But Dad, that's not fair. You said I could go. You've always told us never to break your promise. Yeah, you're right. I'm breaking my promise. You can be mad. You ain't going. But all you want to, you ain't going to that party. You broke your promise. I thought I could trust you. You're a man of your word. You're a preacher. They just throw the whole. It's tough being a preacher and having kids. And they actually come to church. I mean, it's rough. They can throw that whole Bible thing back at you. And then I got, listen, you haven't read half the Old Testament. I got some stuff I can throw at you right now. You don't want to go Old Testament with me, son. But here's the deal, right? So this idea of you see, why would I break that rule? Because I wanted my kids to know that they are more important than any rule that I have made. Because the only reason I made the rule is because I love them and I want the best for them. See, that is your Heavenly Father. And that is why He had to come and live among us. So, Father, I don't know if I've confused everybody in here. Father,